Brodes Media.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Open Ice Hits. I'm up until 2 a.m. watching extended highlights after games are already over that I already watched the whole damn game just to get more in me because I need more. And I guess I didn't even need to do that with the Bruins Capitals because of how much extra time they played anyway. Double overtime. I'll be honest with you, Durso. We're going to jump right into things here. I don't even think the Bruins deserve to be up 2-1. I just don't. I think the Capitals outplayed them. I think the Capitals should have won to take a lead in that series. Somehow, someway, at the end of the day, though, because of miscommunication behind the net, you have the Bruins taking the series lead back in Boston, and it doesn't feel right for me. But sometimes that's the way the puck goes.
I guess so. I mean, I think it's just really close. This is probably the closest series so far. I think, because this is the only one we're 3 games into at this point, and it could be 3-0 either way, or it could be 2-1 either way. Like, it really doesn't. There's no rhyme or reason to why it's 2-1 Boston as opposed to 2-1 Washington, 3-0 Boston, 3-0 Washington. There's really not. It's just that's how close these games have been, and obviously all 3 going to overtime kind of tells you the whole story. It is. It was just a weird play, but it happens that way sometimes. And, to be prepared like Craig Smith was for that opportunity to finish off that game when it did look like there were multiple times kind of both ways. I mean, there was a section of the first overtime where it looked like Boston was going to find a way to win with their top line on the ice. Then you see Washington looking like they're going to take advantage of opportunities. It was really a good back and forth overtime. Probably the first time. I don't want to say first time all playoffs because Minnesota Vegas played one that went a decent amount of time, but a lot of the overtimes we've seen so far have been kind of still within the first 5 minutes of overtime, very traditional to regular season. We haven't really seen a marathon game yet, and these two teams are going to start, as opposed to their first 2 overtimes. I think the first one ended in about 4 minutes. The second one was 35 seconds. I think we finally saw a game where now the marathon aspect of it comes out, and these two teams could wear each other out going to the next round because of how much extra time they are playing.
Yeah, I think that happened in general just at that game 3 mark. I think I already saw them previously, and that's why I think you saw so many penalties early on in this game. Guys are tired. Guys are getting banged up. Guys are just sometimes you get maybe a little lazier with your stick just because you are so mentally fatigued and physically fatigued as well. I guess, look, I'm just basing this off of gut feel when I'm watching this series play out. To me, I'll watch a Taylor Hall goal happen where it's like self-inflicted wounds sometimes by the Capitals, just like that overtime winner by Brad Marchand when you have Dylan trying to make a play along the wall. I guess and like I said, just gut feel. When I watch this series play out, I feel like the Capitals have it in control, and then they do something silly or they make a nonsense play. Give credit to the Bruins, though. You got to capitalize on those chances. You got to pounce on it when it comes your way, and they've done that. And look, this Taylor Hall story, I think I texted you, making a joke, of course, of best trade in NHL history. That goal was filthy. Come on, man. The way he moved it from his backhand to his forehand, that was ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it really was. And for it to come as quickly as it did after Ovechkin finally got on the board, too, which we had talked about last show, how we've gone. When was the last time you can remember going through 2 playoff games and feeling like Ovechkin didn't score a goal? And finally, he gets that opportunity. Kind of looked like, for the most part, like to me, it looked like he was in position to have that opportunity multiple times. And it just seems like they could never get him the one-timer the way he wants it. Was never really quite in his wheelhouse. And in that situation, you kind of almost lucked out, too, because a Bruin goes down on the play like right before it, too. So it creates an opportunity where they get the puck down low or able to get it out in front. There's Ovechkin there. That was a quick response, though, and it kind of totally turned the game back around because I think that at that point in time, the way things had gone through the first period, all of the special teams time, no scoring yet, you kind of felt like one of these was a matter of time, and sure enough, it was in that situation. And then they come right back, tie it back up, and now you're back locked into one of these close games. And then again, I mean, special teams came through later too, because that's how they tied the game. That's how Boston tied the game back up again.
Stupid penalty. Stupid penalty. It's like that's where it goes back to.
Those power play goals were.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you got to be smarter. And does that go back to just the fact that these guys are worn down? These guys have a lot of miles on them. And look, it's a short amount of time in terms of where you are in the series, but you played a lot of extra hockey. You're banging up on one another. Are you just so mentally fatigued that those type of mistakes happen? You got to have more will, though. If that is the case, if you are getting tired this early into a playoff series in round one, well, then you're just not a championship caliber team, because championship caliber teams know how to maneuver around those type of situations. So you can't put the Boston Bruins power play on the ice. It's inevitable what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be as crazy as Brad Marchand hits it out of midair and puts it in that way, but they're going to find ways to score goals. You have to limit those chances. So shame on the Bruins, or shame on the Capitals for allowing for that to happen. I think the Caps should be up in this series. It just seems to me, when watching this play out, they've been the all-around better team, but the Bruins had more, they pounce on those limited opportunities more. It's just the way I see it.
Does that have to do, for you anyway, does that have to do with the fact that take out game 2 for a minute, because overtime lasted all of 30 seconds? The first game, they make a good play to win the game, and game 3 goes as long as it does, and you feel like they have maybe the better the chances. It looks like they're going to find a way to pull it out. That because overtime is going that way, forget regulation for a moment. I know that's how we get there, but forget regulation for a moment. The overtime feels like that's where they get maybe a little more control, and that's why it feels like they should be up as opposed to down, because one overtime played out really long. It looked like they were going to find the way to get the goal that wins it, and they didn't. Is that how you're feeling?
Yeah, I guess so, honestly. I think it just comes down to, when I'm watching these Washington opportunities, they're there. They're there, and they're creating that happening. And it's right there. Put the puck in. You have it. Grade A. Bury it. And they don't. And I guess that's when you got to tip your cap to Boston, though, because they don't need 10,000 options. That's the power of that perfection line, as your buddy loves to hear, or just in general, the Taylor Hall acquisition.
I was over there last night too, so yeah, that was fun.
How was his celebration?
Kind of shocked, to be honest. I think we didn't see it coming when it happened. Both of us were a little surprised that was where it was going to happen. We just happened to see it because it happened really quickly. The miscommunication you sort of see coming, but then it's the actual, the action of putting the puck in the back of the net. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. He's going, I guess, the opposite way of the broadcast, so to speak. So he's trying to wrap around to what would be the left side of the net. So because of the fact that it's going away from you, you don't know if he's actually got the right angle there, that the goalie's in a position to stop it somehow or something like that. So it happened so quickly that I think more or less we were just shocked than anything, because I guess we didn't think it was going to be a play like that.
True.
I think you were looking for, I think you actually thought it was, I kind of started to sense it could be a little fluky, not that fluky, but something that's going to be like a weird bounce, a scramble at the net, something like that that's going to result in the goal happening.
Yeah, I could grease.
And it wasn't too long. How much longer before that was the Pasternak breakaway that looked like, when you saw that happen, when they actually got him the puck, which I was shocked that happened, because it looked like there wasn't really going to be time for, it was Marchand who made the pass. It didn't look like there was going to be much time to get it there. And then he gets it there. And I think at that point in time, that was probably the first moment of overtime that you were really thinking, oh, there it is. The game's on the stick of the right guy for a little while. And he doesn't score on that. He goes down in the corner afterwards. And I think it was a minute and a half, 2 minutes later that the goal was scored.
It's crazy.
It came out of a much more nothing play than that.
Definitely. And you get your netminder back in play here for Washington. And he's amazing all game long. When I watch that play over and over again, as a former defenseman, I just don't know the angle that he took. I'm really confused. Now, obviously, he thought at some point maybe that the puck would be played off the wall, rimmed around the wall, or put in a soft area or whatnot. Right. But he started to go right instead of taking the proper angle to the puck. And I don't know. I understood what he was thinking, but I don't get why he didn't skate towards the puck that way and maybe utilize the net to cut off anyone kind of forechecking.
Or kind of just to look behind you, too, to see which angle the forecheck's coming from. He's coming in from an angle where I think the only thing to do is just to keep going that direction and just try to use a little bit of speed to create some separation there. move puck out somehow, and I don't know why he would go to the right in that spot instead of the left. Yeah.
Did you see Ovechkin on the bench afterwards?
Yes.
The slow-mo stick break. Man, that's got to be a brutal way to do it. But yeah, watching the angle taken, knowing the forecheck was coming from that side, that's hockey 101 as a defenseman. Use the net to your advantage. You can use it to create space and use it to get a nice angle so you can come around the other side and make an outlet pass. And now you are through the neutral zone and you're gaining the offensive zone within a snap of your finger. Use the net to your advantage. And that weird right angle he took just for half a second was the difference in a wraparound. So kudos to Craig Smith to grab that bingo. This Bruins team's now up 2-1, and you're in Boston. This could be a scary spot for Washington.
Yeah, and it was really funny, too, because throughout the game, and we actually talked about this while we were watching, my buddy and I, like, Craig Smith hasn't really shown up yet this series in that regard. We've seen Taylor Hall get some goals now. Their top line has delivered in certain situations. I mean, Marchand's got 2 huge goals now that can turn a game, things like that. And it was kind of like that was one of the few guys to this point, because even down to Jake DeBrusk had scored in each of the first 2 games, so they're getting the depth scoring, but they're getting the top line production. And Craig Smith was kind of the guy who stood out as a newcomer to this team, playoff time at least. We've obviously seen him all year with this team, but playoff wise, that you're going, not much there yet, not much that I've seen yet. And then he makes a play like that and just heads up play to be aware of the situation, to take advantage of that miscommunication that was there and that opportunity and find a way to win it and score a huge goal that gives them the series lead. Seems to really, to an extent, I think, put some things not completely in their control, but puts it in their favor now. Like, they've got the momentum, and you're 1 win on home ice away from really having a hold on this thing. I don't think it's necessarily nothing's a guarantee. This series has been ridiculously close.
Yeah.
It's one of the only ones that I can think of that has the team even had a 2-goal lead in this series? I don't think so yet.
That's a great question.
It's pretty much, tied or a 1-goal margin the entire way. And that's pretty telling of how close these two teams are. This is why I love this division right now, though, too. This division in general, I think, is very tight, and that's why you get excited about it, because of the fact that we're going to get into a couple of the other games down the road here, and obviously we can't really talk about the North yet like this because there's been a grand total of 1 game between 4 teams. But the rest of them, you're starting to get a sense for series that you go, these feel over or close to over, or at least there's a clear-cut team that's better. I can't pull any team from the East and go, I know who's better right now. I know who's going to win out of this division. You just can't right now, and that's the exciting part.
Yeah, it's a great point for sure, and you're right, because I was thinking, okay, let's say hypothetically the Bruins do take a 3-1 series lead. There is so much inside of me that goes, this series is not over. It's the Washington Capitals, and even if the Capitals were up 3-1, I would say this series is not over. It's the Boston Bruins. There's too much veteran leadership and veteran pride on both sides where I could see Alex Ovechkin and Backstrom and TJ Oshie fighting back for 3 straight games, just like I could see Bergeron, Marchand, and anybody else stepping up and fighting back for 3 straight games if they were down 3-1. So, and that's why this next game, yes, it's huge for Boston, but it's definitely not a series difference maker, because I think both of these teams can do the unthinkable if they're facing adversity.
Yeah. Oh no, it's not this is not. It's huge for both sides, obviously, because this will determine whether we're 2-2 or 3-1. But I don't think it's make or break for either team completely yet. Where if one won it or one lost it, that they're out of the series completely. The reason I just think it's huge for Boston is because of the fact that would be able to keep the home ice advantage going for a little bit, because now you've got the opportunity that by Game 6 you could clinch and play that last game on home ice before going to a Game 7, before having that 1 game left in Washington, as things continue to take the step that they are, because I feel like every day now I'm seeing another update on crowd sizes and fans being allowed in or whatever they're going to do. And to take those steps now, it makes it actually feel legitimately like home ice becomes a factor again. And that's what's exciting about it. I mean, that's what's exciting about playoff hockey, but at the same time, that to me makes Game 6 of the series, should we get there, of course, huge, because then Boston would have probably the chance, assuming they can win one of the next 2, to put the series away before it goes back to Washington for Game 7. And I'm not calling that a must. I don't think that they couldn't win a game 7 on the road. I feel like I've seen their core enough to know they can pull out just about anything. But if you give them that opportunity, especially when you consider what we're currently looking at, and it's early in the other series, just 2 games, could we be looking at a series where, again, those 2 teams, because it really feels like these 2 are wearing each other out already.
Definitely.
The way these three overtime games in 3 playoff games of a series. But this other series with Pittsburgh and the Islanders feels like it's going to run long too. So if you're done in game 6 and you have that extra couple of days to just rest up again and kind of refuel just a little bit, that could be a difference maker. And that's why I think that would be so huge to Boston, just because you could start to see it, like you said, with you start to empty the tank in games like that where the second overtime is underway. There wasn't an immediate goal, so you're about 5 minutes in. You're still trying to play it out. How much longer is it going to go? And I think that, doing that for so many games in a row already, you want to try to finish the series off as soon as possible because it could really wear you down.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Looking ahead at the future series, I haven't really gotten to that part yet in my brain where I'm starting to analyze the next series just because, as you kind of alluded to, you're only game 2 in, you're only game 3 in. So until you start getting to game 6, game 7, and you realize, okay, well, the next series starts here, can you maybe, you know what I mean? You don't really get that snowball effect yet, but that's a phenomenal point, knowing that these 2 are going head-to-head on this course of nonstop, just that extra breather, even if it's one day. If it's one day, that one day could make such a huge difference for the following series. But you did touch on the Penguins, so let's get to that series as the Penguins do bounce back and get a victory. After the game, the first storyline, every time I swear this series plays a game, the discussion is Jarry. I mean, it's Jarry, and they do get a win with him in there. Another goal, though, to the glove side. Glove side, glove side, glove side, glove side. Is the glove side going to be able to hold up enough? It in this game, they win 2-1. But Jarry continues to be that hot topic, as it should be. But he gets beat again short side. Is there a true concern, or do you think that it can play its way out where they can find a way to squeeze a victory, a series win out, knowing the goaltender hasn't been, let's say, the sharpest in an area?
The true concern to me is not solely his glove side. It's a concern because it's pretty much the book on him and everybody knows it. See, to me, the concern at this point would be, okay, you got the good performance from him now throughout the course of a game. He stepped up. He did his part. You don't win 2-1 games without your goaltender being good, obviously.
Yeah.
The Islanders, to me, are one of those teams, though, that takes the information and finds a way to process it and come back stronger from whatever they didn't do the previous game. Maybe that is more shots to the glove side. Maybe that is just taking more shots in general than they got in the previous game. Even if they took a decent amount, it could be finding a way to do that differently. Maybe it's the way, and I don't believe, I think actually the only special team that came into play in the Islanders' favor anyway was that penalty late. I think that was their only power play, wasn't it? The Brian Rust closing the hand on the puck.
Yep.
That was the only power play they got. So there's a minute and a half left, but if you are able to create more of those opportunities, taking advantage of them so that you are in a better position there, even down to cleaning up some of the other mistakes too. I mean, Pittsburgh was on the board really early because of a turnover, and it's a mistake, and that's that can be a difference maker when there's not a lot of goals to go around. And it's weird to look at the final score of that game and say Pittsburgh actually found a way to do it. Not because Pittsburgh's not capable of it, but that felt like, that score is prototypical Islanders hockey where you have to really grind it out to get any goals. And that's where, mainly I think that's the best thing is that, or the best thing for Pittsburgh is that Jarry really stepped up.
Yeah, he had the goal.
The goal was to his glove side. I get it. But he really stepped up, and that at least should build some confidence in him, but they really need it to last because I think that this game 3 to me, especially now that the series goes back and has the Islanders on home ice, this game 3 to me could really shape the way the series goes because especially if the Islanders win it and then can kind of continue to adjust to everything and continue to follow the evolution of this series, this is one that I think would be a much more lopsided 3-1 if it were to go that way. And I don't want to jump too far ahead and say that the Islanders are just going to go up 3-1. But if they obviously can take game 3, I think they'll have game 4 in their sights very clearly at that point to just put a good hold on this series. And I think that would put Pittsburgh in trouble if that happened.
Yeah,
in
definitely.
that sense. Like, I don't feel like Pittsburgh's the same type of team as in the Boston-Washington series where you go, oh, if it was 3-1 either way, I think that they could come back. I think that at that point in time, the Islanders would lock down one of those final 3 games and finish this thing off. And that's, look, the Pittsburgh core has a ton of experience in this. I get that. I feel like the Islanders' experience from a year ago, if they were to get a 3-1 lead, it would be over because they know how to lock it down. And we'll see. I mean, I want to get your take on this because here's kind of an interesting thing. Something I thought it was interesting anyway, and I don't think it was detrimental to the Islanders' game. But what do you do now if you're Barry Trotz after having Varlamov play game 2 and knowing you won game 1 with Sorokin in net, though it was a much higher scoring game than this? Like, I don't know that he has a favorable guy per se. He's gone with both throughout the year. Both have been good. It's not like you can pick one or the other and say you don't have a chance to win. You do. But is there a guy, like, would you rather have the veteran experience? Do you actually think that you lean on Sorokin more just because Varlamov wasn't available for that game 1 kind of?
Yeah, honestly, that's a great question. I don't have a feel on it because if I base it off of the track record here of what they've done, they've utilized both guys. So I really don't know. I mean, I would like to say, just because of how I normally look at it, the veteran experience is normally what I like to personally I like to lean on that. I tend to go with, you've been around the block more, you've experienced this more. But I don't know. They go back and forth so much. So if you're asking me what would I personally do, I would lean on the veteran who's been around the block. What are they going to do? I could see them going both ways. I literally can flip a coin, and that's the way I see them going with this. It's very interesting, and that's been one of the questions we've been asking even heading into the series when previewing the series. What is Barry Trotz going to do in net? We also touched on gaining players at the trade deadline, and Jeff Carter stepped up. We've been giving praise to Boston for scoring with Taylor Hall nonstop. Well, Jeff Carter gets that second goal there in the first period to put them up 2-0. Jeff Carter buries one. I mean, that was a huge thing as well. What are the players going to do who you picked up at the trade line to be something added to your core? And that was a big bingo. It ended up being the game-winning goal. So I want to touch on Jari more, but before I do that, what's your thoughts on net minding? Because I honestly just have no feel on it. I don't know what they're going to do, but I would choose veteran.
I tend to lean the same way. Now, here's kind of an interesting thing, and I guess I'll ask it. I'm not used to asking so many questions to you during
Look at this.
I know. So, because I also, in addition to notes on whatever games have happened since our last show, I have the rest of the schedule written down too. Does the dynamic of Thursday night to Saturday afternoon come into play too?
Yes.
And in that sense, because it does, do you almost lean because you actually can go back and forth, and you started with Sorokin this time, not with Varlamov in game 1, that you go Sorokin game 3, and then on the shorter between games, go to Varlamov with the afternoon preparation and the lack of morning skates when those games are that early in the day. And 3 o'clock's not terribly early, but you get the point. Like, there's not going to be some 10 a.m. morning skate that you have before a 3 o'clock game. It just doesn't work that way. So maybe you lean vet there. I mean, especially for right. I mean, we know there's a game 5. There has to be. The series is tied, so we know there's a game 5, but we don't have a time for that yet either, because I guess the thing there is they scheduled the game 4s already for that day, and then any game 5s, I think there's 2 that are already guaranteed to happen and 1 that's a question mark. So until they know it's a definite, they won't schedule, I believe is how it works. So the fact that you're going to go probably through Saturday, maybe it's Friday night, maybe it's Saturday, I don't know, but through at least that point, not knowing when the game time is on Monday, which it'll be in the evening more than likely. That's not, hard to figure out, but still, I think that dynamic makes me lean Varlamov in 4 just because it's less time to prepare for a game. Maybe a younger goalie needs that time.
Yeah,
you can give the goalie, the younger guy, the full day.
With that knowledge, knowing that was the time of their Saturday game, I think it's more open to that conversation for sure. But I could still see it going the other way too, where you throw Varlamov in game 3, and then, yes, you have a shorter mental preparation, and these guys, they have their planned out days on game days. So you don't want to throw someone out on a loop, especially a younger player. They're a creature of habit. That's the word I was looking for. Thinking of, what pitchers do every day for like baseball. They're creatures of habit. They go through their set schedule when they're going to pitch that day. Well, it's the same with the goalie. So if you throw him into a 3:00 game on a Saturday and he's a young cat, will that kind of throw him off of his mental preparation? But I could see it going both ways. But knowing that dynamic, I think you're going to see one or the other. I don't know which way it plays out, but I'd still probably go with Varlamov in Game 3, in my personal opinion.
I think you also lean veteran now also because the series tied. It's tied.
Yep.
That's another reason too. Like, you've got to feel like, I don't think either team needs Game 3 to win the series. I think that either one could lose Game 3 and come back, win Game 4, turn the series back into a brand new series, and then still find a way to move on and win it. But I think you've got to feel like, if you're the Islanders, if you're Barry Trotz, you've got to feel like you need this game. You need to come out strong on home ice, make a statement, win the game. And maybe that makes me lean Varlamov just for the experience of it. He's a good coach. We all know that. He's an outstanding coach. So we might, let him push the right buttons, or see if he pushes the right buttons. He typically does. So I think just leave it in his hands the way he has. I'll stick to his classic line at this point this year. A Russian will be in goal for the Islanders. We just have to wait and see which one. So we'll figure that out as it happens.
Yeah. Always a classic. That's just like us starting at 8 a.m. and saying, you know what, we'll only go 45 minutes this time. And then we end up going till 8:58 because we both need to be off by 9 o'clock. So just a classic line that we always like to throw out as well. All right, let's go. I was going to say real quick on Jari, we don't have to touch too heavily on it because I want to move to that Nathan McKinnon hat trick last night that we witnessed. But you talked about the confidence in Jari, and hey, he did something very solid to help his team out. And while that's great, and it's big for building how he feels about his game that he needs, whether his glove side's perfect or not, can you rely on Jari to be that? If you watch him in net, and you watched him after that game, do you think you're going to get that version? And will it take that version to win this series? And if so, is that a long-term play for Jari? Can he be that successful, that smooth, that solid for the entirety of a series? I have some question marks there. So it won you a game, and it helped you in this game. Can that be the Jari that you get more times than not? And I don't know if the answer is yes.
Right. And I guess because you also feel like, maybe Washington's the only other team that doesn't have this in that division anyway, but you look at some of the veteran experience on the other side, you look at what Varlamov can give you, and I feel like we overlook Varlamov's first game of the playoffs here in Game 2 because of the fact that he lost the game, or he was a losing goaltender, but he only gave up 2 goals, so it's not like he had a terrible game. And I think Tuukka Rask has played well for Boston, so I think we look at those guys and go, yeah, they're capable of that. When you really have to lean on them, and maybe that's why, you kind of asked the question, not to try to go backwards too much, but you asked the question, how's Boston leading the series? Maybe that's your answer, that, when you needed it, Tuukka Rask has made the big saves and has been your best player at the most critical stages of the game when you can't allow another goal. He's been the best guy for you. Maybe that's what we need to see from somebody else in the division. Maybe for Washington to get back into their series and tie it back up or something like that, they need a goaltender to be their best player. And Samsonov was good in that game up until the gaff behind the net. For Pittsburgh, we've seen Jari play at his highest level, I think, with that one, giving up just 1 goal. But can he sustain it? I think for the Islanders, do they find one guy who does that they keep rolling with? Do they keep going back and forth and getting the same thing, keeping goalies fresh for the rest of the playoffs? But somebody's going to have to find it in that sense where one guy really clearly maybe emerges that kind of makes you think that that's what puts all the pieces together for a team to come out of this division, that the goalie is clearly the best player. And then on top of that, you're getting everything from everybody else. It's your top players performing. It's your depth scoring showing up, your defense playing well in front of your goalie. I think we've seen every team show that in spurts, but I don't know if we've seen it for an entire game yet from any of these teams, and that's really probably what could be the difference maker.
So you're telling me the goalie matters in a playoff run? Shocking breaking news.
Yeah, really. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
No, I'm just busting. All right, let's get to the Colorado Avalanche. All right, because there's some controversy involved in this game. The Kadri hit. And that's the controversy. There's no controversy in scoring a hat trick. That was an amazing performance by Nathan McKinnon all around the ice. So I'll let you take this for a ride. Do you want to go with how awesome Nathan McKinnon is, or do you want to go with that hit? I kind of, you know what? No, damn it. I'm going to control this. I texted you last night, and I said, I have a hot take for you. And it's maybe I'm being hypocritical because of where I just was with Tom Wilson just a few episodes ago. And we both had rage. We really did. Let me be clear with this Kadri hit. It's suspendable. It should have been 5 minutes. It was brutal. It was a hit to the head. You knocked the guy out unconscious. It was bad. It was a bad play. That's not in the game of hockey anymore. And this guy has been under the radar before for being someone who plays on that edge as well. Maybe not to the level of Tom Wilson, but no one is because of where Tom Wilson is. But he might be next in line. Him, Brad Marchand, he's in that range. He's not out of range. But when I watched the one specific angle of it, I hated it. I hated the hit. But I do think that there's a line of people saying, like, it was, like, disgraceful and distasteful and just, like, an embarrassment to the game. I don't think it was an embarrassment to the game type of hit. I just think you got to be smarter than that, and you can't hit him in the head. But it doesn't go to, like, level of this is embarrassing to the game. And I did see that reaction. I hope that is... hopefully I said that the right way, though, to you. Do you understand how I'm approaching that?
I think you did.
Okay.
Well, because here's the thing, too, okay? There were two separate occurrences, and again, not to change series all over the place, but there were two separate occurrences in the Florida-Tampa game. I thought that Ryan McDonagh should have gotten 5 for the boarding call, and he got 2. And then Sam Bennett gets 2 later in the game for something very similar. Actually, it was called charging on the ice, then reviewed later as a boarding incident, and that's what he gets suspended for. And I kind of thought, well, if you're going to look at that and suspend it, and believe me, that was an awful looking play, but I still think you should have looked at McDonagh's too a little closer. I didn't look at either. I mean, Bennett's was a little bit was definitely worse than McDonagh's. I mean, Bennett came flying across the ice. His was from a point where he didn't.
His was way worse. His was worse. Yeah.
But at the same time, I sit there and I go, like, I don't know that Bennett has that complete reputation. You know, I don't. But beside the point there, I don't feel like those are things that because of how they look in the moment, we sit there and go, get him out of the game. Like, that's what we had. That's the reaction we have to Tom Wilson because it happens all the time. I didn't feel like, look, I didn't like what McDonough did, but I didn't sit there and look at it and go, get him out of the game. Like, as a whole, I think I wanted him out of that particular game. I go, that's possibly, match penalty worthy, but that's about it. I don't need anything else. I'm not sitting here saying don't let the guy play for the rest of the series. Give him a game. He did something that I think is worth a game. That's all, or even give him the 5 minutes and kick him out of the game and then come right back the next game.
Just
he's
real
out
quick,
for the rest of the game.
Are you talking McDonough right now? Or are you talking the Kadri about the game?
No, I'm talking about like McDonough. But what I'm saying is that's an instance that we sit there and go, we don't want to see that in the game anymore, but it still happens, and we don't sit there and say, let's kick a guy out of the league for it.
Right.
Like I look at Kadri's and I saw the same thing. I saw it's a bad play. It doesn't need to happen. He didn't need to go to that extent. He should have gotten the major. He should be suspended for it, especially since he's got a history of doing this in the playoffs, no less. But it's not to that level. I just look at it, and I texted you back and even said, to me, it's the timing of it. You're leading a game 3-1 in the third period. What are you doing with that?
Well, that's when I pushed back a little bit on you, only because you're right. I get what you're saying, but to me, I guess I'm just going like in player mode, right? Put me in player mode. I'm up 3-1 in a playoff game. Everyone already knows how dangerous a 2-goal lead is. I'm not letting up because it's 3-1. Was kind of my counter. It's 3-1 in a playoff game, knowing how dangerous that lead is. There's nothing in my brain going, this is where I need to take my foot off the gas because we're up. Now, I think situationally, I'm not going to cut across the middle and hit someone in the head.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the results were scary too. I mean, it adds.
You got to pick your spot there. That's what I'm saying. And again, because of the fact that my first reaction to seeing what happened was, this is going to be 5. And as soon as I felt that way, I'm going, you just opened the door wide open for a team that kind of in a weird sort of way, look, I saw 3-0 middle of that game and thought this thing's over. And they got one and they continued to hang around. And it seemed like they were pushing back in that third period. And you just opened the door wide open for them. And if not for really solid penalty killing for 3.5 minutes, they probably would have scored 2 on that, because you left them with only a minute and a half, less than that, to go follow up the first goal they got back to try to get the second one. And I think the point was made throughout that power play that St. Louis had. For 5 minutes, you kept the top 3 guys they have off of the ice. And that was your shot to get back into the game. But that's kind of to an extent, without trying to not be, because I wouldn't want Colorado to not be physical in that spot. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want them to stop being physical with 11 minutes or 12 minutes left in the third period. But I also don't want a guy who takes my top players off the ice for 5 minutes like that and opens the door wide open for the opposition to find a way to get back into that game. When I've got it sort of in my control, I sit there and I look at everything that Colorado had going for them in that game to that point, and I go, you've got the best player in the series right now, probably the best player in the league in terms of playoff performance right now. You've got the best player in the league in playoff performance. He's dominating. I'm going to be able to put him out there down the stretch, maybe get one more and say this game's over. Defensively, you're playing a strong game. Your goaltender's sharp. Everything's going your way in that sense. And that's not to say it wasn't that way for St. Louis at times. Like, I think Binnington kept the game close for long enough that it made that situation interesting. But you really have the game kind of in your control, at least from my vantage point, with the talent level and skill level that Colorado has. You've got that game in your control, and you open the door wide open by doing something like that.
Time and place. Right, time and place. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, you don't want to give up on the physicality, because we know that would be silly. But, yeah, you're right.
Don't stop playing, but pick your spots there, especially over the middle like that, when you know what you're trying to do to that extent. And it's not just make there shouldn't be any hit that's soft anyway, but like, you're not trying to just shove a guy off the puck there. You're going in, you can see what it's leading to. You can see where his head is already positioned as he's trying to get something on goal.
Yeah,
you can see where it's going.
He tried to give him one. That's for damn sure. And I'll give credit to the Blues here. They're outmatched, all right? They're outmatched. But they're playing Craig Berube hockey, if you will. They're playing for their coach. They're leaving everything out there. I think when it's all said and done, you look at the other side if you're St. Louis, and the series is not over yet. But as we alluded to, we don't feel the same way about the Blues as we would at Washington or at Bruins if they're down 3-1 or whatever the case may be. They are leaving everything out there. You're probably look in the mirror afterwards and say, look, we left everything out there on the ice. It came down to guys like Nathan McKinnon, who's scoring insane goals off the post and in and finding lanes. And, I mean, the guy's just absolutely ridiculous. I was trying to put myself in that situation, right? Here I am, somehow in my brain, I'm a captain of an NHL team in a playoff run, but just scoring a goal in general, scoring a hat trick in general in a playoff game. Like, what does that even feel like? To put the entire team on your back, to have the fans going crazy, throwing the hats on the ice, in the locker room, undressing, getting in the showers, putting on your suit. It's like, yeah, I had a hat trick today. And then you just go on to your rest of your life as if it was just a, typical day at the office. You go to the mailbox, you see your neighbor. Hey, Nathan, how was work today? It was nice. How was your day, Jim?
I mean, I guess, isn't that just another day at the office for Nathan McKinnon at this point?
It is. That's
how good he is. This is why I led off the last episode by saying what I did. More people need to talk about this guy than we do.
Someone tweeted at me last night, best all around, because I said, Nathan McKinnon, you're ridiculous. And someone responded with, Nathan McKinnon's the all around best player in the NHL right now. And I felt my fingertips wanting to go. I mean, come on, Connor McDavid. It's not that hard. Connor McDavid. But did he have a point by saying that?
It's tough because, look, I think that the league is at its best also when you've got multiple guys who you can put into a conversation as who could be the best. Look, I don't think anybody's going to match the type of production that Connor McDavid has. And I guess weirdly enough in saying that, because we still haven't touched on that yet, the fact that he was held without a point in his playoff debut this season really says a lot, like in terms of what Winnipeg did in that game. But we could pick out a couple people. I mean, you've seen the skill of Sidney Crosby still. You see what, Alex Ovechkin having an impact on his team in one of these games, even though they lost that game later on. You see McKinnon doing it. You want to see McDavid doing it and Austin Matthews doing it when the time comes, and we're not that far off from Austin Matthews' time. That's what you want to see. You want to see the best guys step up, and we've seen it with some, and it creates this good discussion, I think, because we're seeing substantial performances from the top guys in certain situations, and we haven't really even, there's nobody else in the playoffs right now who's put together performances like this yet. That's, I think, what it is too. We tend to focus on those kind of things. If later on, as we get to Thursday night's games, if Sidney Crosby comes out and has a 4-point game, or if Austin Matthews scores a pair in his first game or something like that, you know what I mean? We're going to be talking about that next time for the same exact reason, because we'll go, look at that performance. That's what we come to expect from guys of that skill level. It's just that McKinnon's the guy who actually is doing it right now, and it's been 2 games in a row, and he had 2 goals in the first one. He's got 3 more in this one, so he's got 5 goals in 2 games. He had a 4-point game in game 2. That's just absurd.
Yeah, it is.
I guess he had 3 points in game 1. So he's up to 7 points and 5 goals in 2 games.
I don't know how you slow that down.
But that's McDavid worthy, because McDavid toward the end was putting up 3-4 points a game, it felt like.
He was.
That's what it is.
Yeah, no, it's and I love the fact of knowing Nathan McKinnon, and we all know the story at this point, but how he skates because of Halifax, right? He skates back with Sidney Crosby in the summers and all that, and they just get their work in, and knowing you can see it, knowing that you can see his game over the years just snowballing into this great play, and it's like he takes all the tendencies that Crosby's probably worked with him in the summers and then now applied it to the actual NHL level and now the NHL playoff level, and this Colorado team is on a ride. They seem to be a powerhouse in that series. All right, we'll go to the Jets here. They won 4-1 in game 1. You touched on it with McDavid. You know what? I had this feeling, and it's only 1 game. I'm not ruling out Edmonton by any means, but there's just something about Edmonton that it's just because maybe they haven't done it. The track record is, Edmonton hasn't been the team that's just dialed into the playoffs and going on these rides or going on these little spurts where you could rely on Edmonton to be that team. It's only 1 game, but there is something about the Jets lineup that I just thought, not sexy, doesn't pop, but maybe flying under the radar a little bit. And I think you noticed that in game 1 with what they're able to bring to the table. And their captain is a hell of a player that slides under the radar. Maybe it's because of the market he plays in, but there's something in Winnipeg that they're a good team, and you can't count them out. I think they showed you that in game 1.
That was an impressive showing by a team that was shorthanded, and everybody knew it. I think that everybody was waiting for the Connor McDavid show, and I don't blame anybody for that. But that was a really strong showing. I think when you get key goals from guys you don't necessarily expect, especially when your lineup is already shorthanded. So when Poolman and Toninato are the guys scoring goals for you that matter in big spots.
Who?
Yeah, kind of. But at the same time, you go, that's what makes playoff teams successful as well, is that they get the contributions from up and down the lineup. Doesn't matter where. A guy who scored 1 goal in the regular season just needs to score that 1 big goal in the playoffs, and it could probably win a game. I think the difference maker for Winnipeg, though, was Connor Hellebuck. I think that was clearly, the advantage point that they had, and in showing that that's what can keep them in this series for longer. It probably is what made me lean towards Edmonton, as much as I still have Edmonton winning the series. It's why I didn't have it being super short, because that possibility still exists for a goalie of that caliber to steal a couple of games for you and to be in that position to really take some. Now, I don't think that this was the game I expected them to take, given the guys they're missing, but at the same time, maybe this changes some things. Maybe this changes the way we view this series just a little bit for right now anyway. I mean, until we actually see Edmonton win a game in the series, and Edmonton win a game in a series where McDavid and Draisaitl are really the keys to winning the game, I don't know that we're going to feel like this isn't here we go again from the Edmonton Oilers. I think that's what we're feeling today specifically, because it's 1-0 Winnipeg in the series. And why is that? Because McDavid and Draisaitl were held off the board in that opener. And that's substantial for, the whole situation. And for Winnipeg to have any shot in this series, that's what it's going to take. You need the goaltending, and you need to find a way to shut those guys down. And for 1 game, at least so far, they were able to do that.
Yeah, it'll be crazy to see what happens when those guys do come back in the lineup. We talked about their center depth all season long when they did make the acquisition, move on from Line A, bring in a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois, and just how that pushes, like in a good way, pushes some other guys down in the lineup to just talk about your depth. That was something that was going to make this team go on a strong push, and for them to snag game one being shorthanded the way that they were, that's just magnificent. We talked about how there were counterattacks always by Barry Trotz. When something doesn't go right, they tweak things and make it right for the following game. Does Edmonton have that type of power? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Today's the gut feel show for me today. It's the gut feel Brodes show. My gut tells me no, not to the level of Barry Trotz. Not that many people can. That's why Barry Trotz is special as a coach. So I'm not acting as if it's normal to accomplish that goal the way Barry Trotz accomplishes that goal. But my gut feel tells me the counter won't be as smooth and won't be as easy of a transition like we see with that Islanders team.
Well, and here's a great point that I can probably make for this then is what makes you think that the series between Washington and Boston is not over right now? Because for years and years and years it was Ovechkin can't get there in the playoffs. He's one of the best scorers in the world, but he can't get past a certain point in the playoffs. And once he had, and they win a Stanley Cup, it's now like you put all things on the table with him and with their team because you know that they can just try to flip that switch at some point and turn things back in their favor. That's, I think, what goes against McDavid. It will go against Austin Matthews. It will go against even, I don't want to say completely with McKinnon, but like it will even go with him because they're so young in their careers. And it's, you got to get to a certain point in the playoffs where you're really on that stage, where this is the show that's on right now. Every other night there's one game on and you're on one of those, That's what they need to probably get to. So right now, that's the reason why we view it. Like, I want to believe that a guy like Connor McDavid is going to go in there and go, what can I do differently to be better the next game? And I think he will do that in this, but it really becomes a prove it kind of game for him because of the fact that this is not the regular season anymore, where if you go without a point and don't win the game, there's 5 more, 10 more down the line. The next one is as important as the first one, and he needs to come back stronger. Draisaitl needs to come back stronger. They need to make the adjustments they need to and find a way to win a game to get themselves back in the series, because I think at 2-0, you start getting in your head.
I was just going to say that. What happens if this team falls down 3-0 compared to if they lose a series in 7 and it's back and forth and it's amazing? If it plays out the way the Caps are playing and you lose, you feel differently in Edmonton. If these two stars that give you 100-plus points are losing in a 5-game series to a shorthanded Winnipeg team, the questions become more significant. So I was just thinking the same thing in my head. Man, if this could get ugly. I mean, this could get really ugly.
Friday is huge for the Edmonton Oilers. It's really huge for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And real quickly, you talked about depth scoring and all. I wanted to talk about we're not going to go too heavy into it, but like a Dowd, for example. You see Dowd for Washington just scoring goal. You don't expect Dowd to be this guy who's bringing in big-time Genos for you in the playoffs, but guys step up. But, okay, I'll be honest with you. If we're going to move to the Carolina game, I really don't have much for you, man. It's just an ass whooping.
I was going to say we got 3 series left that we haven't touched on that played 1 game each. Couple quick hitters.
Yeah. I got nothing for my quick hitter for Carolina, nothing. They're going to win. They're going to whoop ass, just like I told you they were going to whoop ass, because Nashville is just a team that snuck in because someone had to make it. That's my assessment. Your assessment.
The only thing that made me think Nashville had more of a chance, if you will, is I still didn't really know what Carolina's goaltending situation was. I've been impressed by Nedeljkovic. I did not think we were going to be seeing that level yet. Now, maybe that also is Nashville's the one team that kind of has stylistically not looked dangerous and not looked scary. Not the way that they did whatever it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. They haven't looked like that. And I'll tell you, one of the takeaways I have from that particular game anyway, if we want to talk about filthy goals, the pass that Andrei Svechnikov makes on the power play.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes.
I love that. Those and I even said after game 1 when we did this that they didn't factor in. It was kind of surprising. It was Jordan Staal scoring the goals, and then Sebastian Aho came out and had a 2-goal game, and that's the end of that. He's here to show you what he's got to, and he's such a good skill player. And when you play on a power play with Svechnikov, it's just outstanding. I thought that Nashville gave an admirable showing to be down by a goal, 1-0 the whole way. I mean, it means you're getting the goaltending of it. And they actually, for a good chunk of the game, beyond, I guess, the first few minutes, outshot Carolina. So they were in it, but The fact that you're down 2-0, I mean, maybe the only thing that stands that's left for you to argue about this is that they're going home now. Maybe that does something, but I think they'd only even get no. But I think that at most they'd only get one out of that and then go back to Carolina.
Stop it with this nonsense. You're trying to hold on to your preview.
No.
You're trying to hold on to your playoff preview.
I didn't say that. I just told you I think that maybe they get one when they go home, and then Game 5 will come along, and that'll be the end of it.
I know. You're thinking they're going to come back and win in 6. I know what you're thinking over there.
Nope.
I know what you're thinking over there.
No,
all right.
Well, I had Carolina in 6, by the way.
Yeah.
So, I really – if nothing else, I guess to quick hit on even the Tampa-Florida series, because we kind of had the same question about that one too.
Yeah.
My kind of thought actually is, can we just jump to the second round and get these two teams like I'd still have questions about Carolina's goaltending if Nedeljkovic can be the guy right away. He's just making his first couple of playoff starts here. I'd want to see him against Tampa because I know what Tampa brings to the table. I'd want to see what Tampa does against a team like Carolina, who's locked down 2 games in the third period as well as any in the league. So I kind of almost want to just skip ahead from these 2-0 leads where it looks like these teams are in control and just get to the and I don't feel like there's just about, at least, and we can't do this with the North yet. We don't have enough of a sample size yet. I don't feel, maybe Colorado, we feel this way a little bit, but then you got another series going on there where you go, it's close, and now that's one where it goes back to home ice that I go, now I want to see what happens in Minnesota. That's different.
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
One where I go,
I agree.
Let's see what that dynamic is. But this Central Division to me, I feel like we've known all along, these are the two that set them, that kind of set the bar for where the talent level and performance level has to be. And can we just jump into it then? Can we just get these two together now and just move forward with it? And that's, look, for saying that probably means that, one's Friday, one's Thursday. Okay, but that means Florida will win in Tampa on Thursday night then, just to make it seem interesting again and make us question. Because Florida's at least a talented enough team and has been all year that you go, one going their way could change your thought process.
Yeah, they're not Nashville territory. I agree with you there. They have a little bit more bang for your buck, if you will, with that.
And I still with the Florida series, I go back to Game 1 and I go, you scored 4 goals on Andrei Vasilevsky and you didn't win the game, and that's killer to me. I think now you got in Game 2, you got the good defensive performances, you got the goaltending. Vasilevsky was great. It's that's where you see what Tampa does on the other end of that spectrum when it's not a lot being allowed for the opposition. And that's how they won a lot of games in the playoff run a year ago.
Yeah.
So that's really where we are, and I think that's pretty much all we've got right now, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that Vegas-Minnesota one of Marc-Andre Fleury was ridiculous. Well, we'll touch more on that series in the next one now that we're dropping 2 episodes a week again.
I mean, look, you just hit on about all I had. Marc-Andre Fleury was incredible once again. 2 tucks for Alex Tuck.
Yeah, there you go. I like that.
And Vegas doing what they have to do. I mean, that was a close game throughout. It was 2-1 until the very last minute of the game, and Vegas locked it down like these good teams do. They find a way to shut everything down in the third period, and they did in that situation. So, but I think that one's a long series still to come.
I agree. I'm very pleasantly surprised with the fight from the young ones in Minnesota for sure. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Open Ice Hits, and we'll catch you on Monday. Monday morning, we'll drop one, and we'll get back into the 2 days a week, Mondays and Thursdays. So, thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.